Hi everyone, Ian here again, and in the last of my series on flying in strong winds, I thought today I'd actually take the Mavic Pro up in the air and go through some of the key points you need to consider when you are flying in strong winds. Flying in high wind really should be avoided. It brings additional risks that you can do without. But if for whatever reason you feel you have to fly, there are some things you can do to mitigate those risks, and I'll be going through those today. So before we take off, there are a few key points that you want to consider that are actually good advice on any day of the week, but even more so if you've got strong winds. First off, always make sure you fly with a full battery. Stops you taking risks, stops you pushing it to the limit. Secondly, always fly out into the wind so that you're returning with the wind. Again, this stops you being caught out by being too far away and finding out the hard way that you can't make it back. Thirdly, stay away from trees and buildings. Again, that's good advice for any flight, but all the more so if it's windy, where you might suffer the odd signal loss and you might get a bit of unexpected movement with your drone. Fourthly, try flying a little lower as well. The winds normally increase the higher you go. Quite often, very close to the ground, you'll only have a strong breeze. You go 30, 40, 50 meters up into the air and suddenly you're getting those wind warnings because the wind is a lot stronger up there. And finally, perhaps one of the most important things that I know all too well, if you are going to fly, make sure you're flying over a wide open area where you can easily retrieve your drone if you have to make an emergency landing. Today I'm going to be flying the Mavic Pro, again out over the open field. I don't believe I'm going to need to make an emergency landing, but if I do, I'll be able to walk across and pick it up. If you're flying over water or anywhere that you haven't got access to and you have to make a landing, you could have a difficult time in store. So I outlined the other week, there's a couple of differences between the Pro and the Air with regards to flying in strong winds when you're not in sports mode. In a nutshell, the Air will disable its sensors to allow it to go to a very steep pitch and fly quite fast. The Mavic Pro doesn't do that. It maintains a shallow pitch to ensure that the sensors continue to work. But in doing so, it's limiting the amount of speed and the amount of fight back it can do in a strong wind. So you will very easily find yourself being blown off course if you're not flying in sports mode or if you've still got the obstacle avoidance system enabled. Today is too windy for me to be flying with the obstacle avoidance sensors switched on or not in sports mode. I know I'll be blown off course. The wind is stronger today than it was when I was doing my high wind test the other week. So first off, I'll show you how to disable the obstacle avoidance sensors, which hopefully you won't need if you're flying up on an open space far away from trees and buildings. So to switch off the obstacle avoidance sensors, all you do is tap on the equipment and then the sensors, and you have the option enable obstacle avoidance. Switch that off. It does warn you that you're switching it off, but in doing that you'll then be able to fly at a much steeper pitch and it should be able to handle the strong wind far better. Could be argued it's much easier just to flip it into sports mode. There's not much in it, to be honest. Some people just don't like flying in sports mode because the controls are far more sensitive. Myself, if I can see the Mavic Pro is struggling, I will normally just flick it into sports mode rather than going through the menu options to disable the obstacle avoidance. Okay, so first off, I've disabled the obstacle avoidance, but I'm not going to be in sports mode. We saw the other week in the high wind test, the Pro really did not handle flying into the wind with the obstacle avoidance sensors switched on. Let's see the difference now with them switched off. The wind is actually stronger today than it was the other week, so it'll be a very good test. Like I said before, make sure you take off with a lot of space. Go. So he's not being blown off at all. Let's fly straight into the wind. Okay, so full throttle into the strong wind. Got up to 6 meters per second. Let's increase the height a little bit. 7 meters per second. So this is a good completion of the wind test I did the other day, and it's good to see that the Mavic Pro can handle high winds quite easily if you turn off the obstacle avoidance sensors. Stop, stop, stop. Overshoot. Come back. Okay, so that's actually really good to see that the Pro can hold its own in high wind if you turn off the obstacle avoidance sensors. Had no problem getting up to about 7 or 8 meters per second there going into the wind. Coming back it was easily straight up to 15 meters per second. So now I will go straight into sports mode and we'll just do the last flight. And if I knock it into sports mode now, so sports mode makes quite a good difference. Onto 11 meters per second, flying straight into the wind again. 12 meters per second, all good. 13, let's go up a little bit higher, trees. Okay, all looks good, let's come home. So there you go, guys. Hopefully that's been a little bit of help for you. Like I said, really you do want to try and avoid flying in high wind. It's bad news. But if you really need to get that shot, then take the steps I've outlined and hopefully you shouldn't have any dramas whatsoever. So as ever, if you like what I do, then tick the subscribe and click the little thumbs up. If you don't like what I do, then click the thumbs down and tell me what's wrong. Either way, have fun and happy flying.